Hope everybody's blessed on this morning. Sister Billy, will you be my substitute secretary? And as the saints come in, you just give them one of those things. Oh, okay, then we don't have to worry about it. Bless you. Sorry. No problem. Does anybody know where we are? What this lesson is about? Somebody tell me. Sabbath. And boy, did God give me some revelation about the Sabbath.
Morning, everyone. Good morning.
One of the things that I learned, as we're going to see as we endeavor to teach this, is that the Sabbath is a day of rest, but maybe even more importantly, let me get two of them.
Okay.
It's a day of worship.
Yes.
I never saw it like that before. But one of the major reasons why God had his people to rest, besides the fact that God rested on the seventh day, was that since you're not doing anything else on the Sabbath, you can dedicate that whole day to worshiping God. And the heathen is watching Israel and their zeal in giving up a whole day, and on that day they worshiping God. So that's actually stood as a sign to the heathen, who are always watching God's people anyway. Are y'all with me?
Yeah.
Hallelujah. All right, we're going to start. We're in, I think this is session 5. Hold on a second. Session 5. Somebody say session 5.
Session 5.
And the title of the lesson, and the title of the lesson is A Slower Pace. Somebody say a slower pace.
You know, it's kind of like what you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Like those who it leads up to this point.
Yes, excellent.
With the place that God sent the Egyptians.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. You look at
They do, and I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. I agree. So, the point of this lesson is that rest is a gift from God.
Yes, it is.
And the passages of scripture that we're going to be teaching on this morning is Exodus 20, 8 through 11, and Exodus 31, 12 through 17. Exodus 20, 8 through 11, and Exodus 31, 12 through 17. Now, one of the first things that we have to understand in this lesson, we start off in Exodus 20, and we're talking about the 10 Commandments. Somebody say the 10 Commandments. Hallelujah. And by the way, these aren't the 10 suggestions. These are the 10 Commandments. That means you better do this.
It's music, when I was giving Moses, he said, oh my God.
I would have been scared.
Once a God.
So, just to give a little bit of background as we go into this. If you look at Exodus 20, which is the first set of scriptures, somebody say the 10 Commandments. The first 4 commandments are commandments that are vertical in nature. Does anybody have any idea what I mean by that? I said the first 4 are vertical in nature, and the last 6 are horizontal in nature.
Okay.
Oh, come on now. Stand up and say that, Sister Ron. My.
Man relationship with other men.
Okay.
Man,
That's vertical. So horizontal is man to God. Hallelujah. So the first 4 commandments are man to God, and the 4th commandment is about the Sabbath. And the rest of the commandments, the other 6, are how man treats other men. That's horizontal. Are y'all learning something? And the first 4 are vertical. That's how man treats God.
Oh!
Alrighty? Somebody read Exodus 28 through 11 for us, please.
I'll take that.
Thank
Exodus 20, verse 8 reads, Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
you.
6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Verse 10, But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is in thy gate. Verse 11, For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Yes. All right. So the first thing that we see is God rested on the 7th day. He didn't have to. I say he didn't have to. I say he didn't have to. He didn't rest because he was tired. He rested because he was finished. I'm sorry.
That makes sense.
I'm sorry. Bad elder, bad. He rested because he was finished. He didn't have nothing else to do. So he
Oh,
rested.
come on, that's true.
Are y'all learning something? It says in Exodus 20 and 8, it says, remember. Remember is the Hebrew word zekar, and it means to mark or mention. So in the verse, he's saying, mention, mark the Sabbath day. Are y'all with me? Mark, well, Elder Cooper, why are they going to mark it? It says to remember the Sabbath day. Then it says, in the 9th verse, it says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Now, this 10th verse is key, because I had never seen this before. And this is funny, because God is thorough. 10th verse. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord, thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Listen now, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle. Cow can't even work. Ain't nobody praying with me. Nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Now see, this is funny to me. Because you know, probably some of them Israelites were kind of tricky. I said kind of tricky. So there were probably some of them said, okay, well, God said that we have to not work on the Sabbath. But that don't mean that my son have to not work on the Sabbath. It don't mean that my servant don't have to not work on the Sabbath. But God put it right in there. Not just you, everybody. Huh? The bull couldn't even pull nothing on the Sabbath. I feel my teacher trying to come. Hallelujah. And it says to keep the Sabbath. And the word Sabbath in the Hebrew is Shabbath, S-H-A-B-B-A-T-H, and the root word there is Shabbath. Now get this, it means to desert, to repose, to celebrate, and to desist. So wrapped up in the Sabbath is not only stopping what you're doing, but one of the part of definitions is to celebrate. Are y'all learning something? So the Sabbath is a celebration day. What you mean by that, Elder Cole? You're celebrating the Lord.
Hallelujah.
Shadabeko Sanda. Hallelujah. I said we're celebrating the Lord. As I get into the 31st chapter, we're going to see a whole lot more about the Sabbath, and that it wasn't just not working on the Sabbath. There was a big spiritual reason for the Sabbath, and we're going to see it. And it says that it's holy. Somebody say holy.
Holy.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Hallelujah.
Mark the Sabbath day. Mention the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Holy has a root word there in the Hebrew that means to be clean, to consecrate, to dedicate, to hallow, to purify.
Jesus.
Huh? So it's saying, remember the Sabbath day to keep it purified. Huh? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it consecrated.
Jesus.
Are y'all learning something? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it dedicated. Woo. Huh? Remember the Sabbath to keep it hallowed. Hallelujah. For those of you that weren't here, in the 20th chapter of the book of Exodus, God gave the Ten Commandments. And the first four are, Sister Rhonda taught us so very well. The first four are vertical. The first four commandments are vertical in nature. That means that's up. That's from God to man. The first four commandments are from God to man. That's how God deals with man. That's how man deals with God. Excuse me. It's from man to God. I'm very sorry. So it's vertical is how man deals with God. The first four. And the Sabbath is the fourth of those vertical ones of how man deals with God. The last six are horizontal in nature. That's how man deals with man. Hmm? In those sections, that's how come you shall not covet thy neighbor's wife or thy neighbor's cattle or anything that's thy neighbor's, because that's what? Man to man. How man, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, because that's man to man.
Honor thy father and thy mother.
Come on now. Everybody with me? Now I like the 10th verse, like I said, because in case we had some tricky Israelites who wouldn't work on the Sabbath, but maybe they have their son work on the Sabbath. What's better? Or their daughter.
Jesus.
Huh? Or have their dog play fetch on the Sabbath. Anybody prayer. But the Bible says that even the animals couldn't do anything on the Sabbath. All right. Verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Amen. Everybody with me so far?
Yes.
Somebody say the seventh day. Isn't it interesting that 7 is the perfect number of God? And God did all his work in 6 days. 6 is the number of man. Isn't that interesting? So man want to work.
Wow.
But God set aside the 7th day. Are y'all with me?
Yes.
And it's set aside not to just rest, but it's spiritual in nature. If you ain't doing nothing else on the Sabbath, you worship God on the Sabbath. The whole Sabbath. Are y'all learning something?
Yeah.
And the heathen is watching the Israelites worship God on the Sabbath, and it makes them think, there must be something to this. I preached about a light in Goshen on this morning, part 1 and 2. And one of the things that I've always said was, God, Old Testament, we didn't have grace then. What's it called? And you read the Old Testament and you'll read stuff like, and God slew him because he was wicked. Just right in the middle of, huh? Hallelujah. Didn't get a chance to finish his dinner. Come on, somebody. Hallelujah. Because that grace hadn't manifested yet like it is now. So it's interesting, and I always say, wouldn't have been a lot of the scriptures in the Old Testament if it had been me, and I was the one going against God, huh? Those wouldn't have been long sections. Because I would have said, nope. Circumcise me. Make me a Jew. I want to follow your God. Oh, hallelujah. God always gave them chances. But there's no, okay, let's think about it. Okay. You at the Red Sea. I talked about this morning. You at the Red Sea, right? And Pharaoh and his boys are chasing you. Huh? You got the Red Sea in front of you. You can't go to the right or to the left because the mountain's over there. So it looked like they got you, right? Okay. And keep in mind, you just had 10 plagues. And Pharaoh found, and when the plague of death came and killed Pharaoh's son, ain't nobody praying with me. He finally let them go. But then he hardened his own heart and came after them anyway. He lied again. So they chasing him. Israel at the Red Sea. And then God does a miracle and congeals or splits the Red Sea. Oh! Jason, no. And God kind of showed me how that looked. Y'all, anybody ever been to the aquarium? Anybody ever been? So you got the glass there, and you see the sea animals, right? Mm-hmm. But see, when the waters congeal, wasn't no glass. It was just water. So the pufferfish was sitting up, looking right at you.
Wow. That makes sense.
Why? Because you got the water. Waters will congeal. Now, have you ever thought about the poor fish wondering what is going on? That's never happened before, and it'll never happen again. Yes, ma'am.
If you kind of relate that to when you were describing the tsunami.
Uh-huh.
When the tsunami hit.
Sure.
Because the water rolls back and rise.
Sure. The water rose outward and upward.
Oh, wow.
And what the tsunami was is it was really a hurricane underneath the water. I mean not a hurricane, but an earthquake underneath the water. And the tsunami, the force of the tsunami came from the earthquake underneath. And it was so much water, they just destroyed everything from a very, 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 very large distance. So, as the waters congealed and froze, or if you will, you see the fish up in the air. When they were under the water, they up now, held up by the water that God has congealed. Are y'all with me? And then Pharaoh and his boys chasing, right? Now, see, first of all, these sinners were really not very bright people. Because if I had been chasing somebody, okay, and Moses kept coming to me talking about, let my people go, that we may go serve God in the wilderness. You know, he kept telling you about his God. Ain't nobody praying with me.
But they couldn't, because God had hardened his heart.
Wait, and not only that, woman of God, but then the Bible also said that Pharaoh hardened his own heart on top of that.
Yeah.
So he had no choice. So here you go. He chasing them, get to the Red Sea split. Now, like I said, we wouldn't have had a whole bunch of these scenarios if I had been in there. Because I would have said, I'm done. Wait, the waters are not supposed to split like this. Be right with you. The waters are not supposed to split like this. Give me a knife or something, circumcise me right now. I want to become a Jew. What's the matter? And I want to follow your God. Because your God split the Red Sea. I ain't never seen nothing like this before. And he kept doing stuff like that. So then, they're chasing him. The sea splits. Now, right then, they should have turned around and went home. Right then. When the Red Sea just split, I would have been done. But no, like the woman God taught us so articulately, he had no choice. His heart had been hardened twice by himself and by God. So they keep going. So now you start to chase them, and you crossed over into where the Red Sea used to be. All right, now wait a minute. The Bible says, and let me tell you what the real miracle of that was. The Bible says that when God did that, split the Red Sea, that there was no moisture anywhere where the sea was. Well, y'all ain't getting this. I said, yeah, Rhonda got it. So you got all those tons of water and got them, not even no dew, no nothing, no moisture. Somebody had a bone dry.
Oh, right.
Oh, I'm gonna teach that. I'm gonna teach that. I'm gonna call it. What's the matter? Why y'all be laughing at me like that? Huh? I'm gonna teach that one day. I'm gonna call it bone dry because that's what they elder. All right. So then he's gone into this area which I never would have done, where the water was used to be. Niggas ran after them. And then, okay, and you're in there, okay, at first, somebody said first. Because the Bible says that the wheels started to loosen up. Okay. Now, if I was stupid enough to go in there when the sea split, as just as soon as I felt a wheel even starting to look like it's getting loose. Now this is if it was Elder Cobra, all right? And Moses done come to me 10 times, talk about his God, all these plagues. By the way, did you all not know that each one of those plagues was an affront against one of the Egyptian gods? Y'all know that? They had a frog god. That's why there was a plague of frogs. Are y'all learning something? They had a fly god. That's why they had the plague of flies. They had a frog god. And that took me back to when Jonathan and Charmaine were little. We used to watch. Anybody remember Superbook? It was an animated cartoon that illustrated the Bible for the kids. Okay, and I used to watch it with them. And they showed the plague. It was hilarious. They showed the plague of frogs. The plague of frogs. It was neat. And the frogs were all on the people's head. Ain't nobody needed all on their head. What's the matter? Huh? And they what? In their tunic. Y'all that friend? Huh? Frog all in their house.
Jesus.
Everywhere. And I was looking at it neat, and the frog all on their head. Frog jumping out their pockets. I'll never forget it because it was funny to me. But that's what it was like. It was a plague of. So then, like I said, as soon as I felt my tires started to feel like it's kind of getting loose, I'm done. And since we're talking about this, I talked about this morning that actually some of the Egyptians were really pretty smart. Because there were some of the Egyptians that called them the mixed multitude. And they went with them. They went with Israel. They said, oh, nope, I'm done. And I also learned something I didn't know before, as I was studying. So the Israelites lived in Goshen, in Egypt. That actually goes all the way back to the book of Genesis and Joseph. So they're in Goshen. And the word Goshen means to draw near. So I guess that the Israelites lived in draw near to God. I'm sorry. All right. So here you go. What I found was, with the plague of darkness, the ninth plague, if this was Goshen city limits, somebody said Goshen city limits. This is the weather the Egyptians were. Pitch black. The Bible said it was darkness that could be felt. It was so dark that Egypt June closed up. Ain't nobody praying. Egypt public school 101 closed up because they said it was darkness that could be felt, and it was so dark they just stayed in their house. for 3 days. Hallelujah. This is showing God's power. So, but what got me was I never knew this either. Some of the right then when that darkness hit, some of the Egyptians converted to Judaism and went to Goshen and lived with the Israelites. And men got circumcised. Come on, somebody. Hallelujah. Somebody say smart. Uh-huh. And they began to worship and serve the living God. Hallelujah. All right, let's get back. Now, one of the main things that I want to make sure that we get concerning the Sabbath, we know that we have a succession of, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, to piggyback on the Pharaoh's army going after the Israelites that are going across the sea.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was, even in the midst of that, God put up a wall of fire.
Come on now.
To stop them while the Israelites went across the sea.
Come on.
Yeah, but then when they was almost across the sea, he removed the wall of fire and let them go, and then that's when they got trapped.
And then the waters came back.
And it closed back up.
Hallelujah.
Drowning Pharaoh's army.
Hallelujah. So, now that we have a few more students here, the Sabbath was a day of rest of succession. God on the seventh day, 7 is the perfect number of God, right? And he worked for 6 days. 6 is the number of man. So he worked for 6 days, rested on the 7th day. 7 is the number of God.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Father God, it's time for offering, okay? Father God, in Jesus' name, Lord, we thank you for the offering. We ask that you bless it 36 and 100 fold. In Jesus' name, I pray.
Amen.
One of the things that we're going to find as we explore the Sabbath day is it wasn't just a day of rest, but there was a very, very, very spiritual aspect to that I had never gotten to all these years. Mm-hmm. Okay, because it might be fairly not real long. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to preach this, so I had to run out. So. Okay. So the Sabbath day, you rest, but also the Sabbath day, since you're not doing anything else, it's a day of what? Worship. The dedication that the Israelites had to the Sabbath influenced the heathens around them and taught them how important worshiping the living God was. Hallelujah. So in the 20th chapter of the book of Exodus, they just talk about the Sabbath. But then when you get to the 31st chapter of the book of Exodus, we get down to brass tacks and we start seeing stuff. We start seeing just how serious God is about the Sabbath day. Hallelujah. I'm going to read Exodus 31, 12 through 17. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Exodus 31, starting the 12th verse, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign, somebody say a sign, between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. So, one of the reasons why they have the Sabbath is why? That the Israelites might know what? That he is the Lord. Are y'all with me? Then it also says that it's a sign. See, they didn't say anything about it, about that early on. 14th verse, ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. The word defiles deal with making a statement or action that insults or profanes something or someone. Right? It says, it shall be put to death. Wait a minute. What happened? I never read nowhere before about you being put to death if you didn't keep the Sabbath. Where did that come from? So this first chapter of Exodus. Now you see more about the Sabbath. Wait a minute. You see how serious God is about Israel keeping the Sabbath. He's so serious that he gonna kill you if you don't keep it. Are y'all learning something? Right. Let me keep on going to 17. Six days may work be done, but in the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord, whosoever doth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Said it twice. Are y'all with me? He didn't just say, I'm going to kill you once. He said, if you don't obey me on this one, I'm going to kill you. He said it 2 times to make sure you got it. Are you learning something? Wherefore, the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. Wait a minute. I didn't see nothing in Exodus 20 about no covenant with the Sabbath. Where'd that come from? Wait, can y'all help me? Wait a minute. When they first start talking about the Sabbath in Exodus 20, there's nothing about nobody dying. Are y'all learning? Ain't nothing about it's a covenant. Huh? None of that. Where all this stuff come from? That's why you have to study your Bible, because you have one set of verses and then you go further, you'll get more clarity on the subject as you go to other scriptures. Amen? It is a sign between me and the children of Israel, 17th verse, for forever. So this is not a temporary thing. All right? For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. The word refreshed in the Hebrew is the word nefesh, which deals with like wind and breath. So what he's saying here is that the wind of God blew. Are you with me? On the 7th day, he was refreshed. He was supernaturally refreshed. Amen? So God's going to supernaturally refresh us on the Sabbath day. I mentioned for some of you that weren't here, the 10th verse in Exodus 20 deals with the tricky Israelites. Because God said very emphatically that as far as this whole Sabbath thing is concerned, God specifically says nobody is to do any work. Now, you probably had some greedy Israelites, and anybody friend, and they're going to try and twist what God said, which is still happening today. God said, nobody, none of y'all do any work on the Sabbath. But probably some of the more greedy Israelites probably turned to their son or their daughter, and had them go to work. Like that didn't apply to them. Are you learning something? But then in the 10th verse, I love the Lord. In the 10th verse, God said, nope. He said, your sons, your daughters, your animals. Are you learning something? The stranger in town, nobody can do any work on the Sabbath. Ain't God smart? Because he know how tricky mankind is. You can't trust him.
Same thing with the manna when they was trying to get the manna.
Trying to hoard it.
Right.
But God turned it on. I remember I was teaching on that one time, and God told me, some of the stuff that preachers teach wasn't there. And it's got worms. I'm sorry. Bad elder. Bad elder. I'm sorry. Yeah. So even the animals couldn't do no work on the Sabbath. Exodus 31:12-14. The Sabbaths were a sign, it says, and we see it to be kept throughout the generation. The word sign here is O-T-H in Hebrew. It means a signal, a beacon, a flag, a monument. This reminds them that this is the Lord's doing. He set them apart from the heathen. So it's a sign not just to the Israelites, but to the heathen. It's a signal. It's a beacon that I'm keeping this Sabbath day because my God is the God. Are you learning something? Oh, hallelujah. This sign pointed to the fact that they worship God alone because he's the only God. It also showed the value that Israel had for their God. Verse 14 says, keep the Sabbath because God has sanctified you. The word therefore there points you back to verse 13. So we also see there here again that it's holy. So we see here that Sabbath connects to worship. This is the main thing I want you to get because I hadn't gotten that. Worship is wrapped up in the Sabbath. That's how come God tells you not to work on the Sabbath, not just for the sake of not working, but because you on the Sabbath day can give the whole day to God. Are you learning something? Do you remember Pastor Turner used to always say, you're supposed to give the whole Sunday, the whole day to God, remember? He said it all the time. Same thing is said here in the Old Testament. All right. And they keep saying that God is holy. Yeah. Like I said, in the 31st chapter of Exodus, you find God kill you if you don't keep the Sabbath, and you find out that it's a covenant. That's scary. I never knew that Sabbath had anything to do with covenant, but it's right here. Are you learning something?
Amen.
And like I said, he said twice you're going to die if you break it. Then it says, we see more. It says the observation of the covenant is perpetual. The covenant of what? The covenant of the Sabbath. It's a covenant. Isn't that interesting? The heathen had no Sabbath because the heathen had no covenant. Huh? And perpetual here in the Hebrew means eternity, always lasts. The word covenant is the Hebrew word beres, which means a compact or a sense of cutting. I'm going to turn it over to Prophetess Juliet, and if I have time left, we'll talk about covenant and walking between the two dead animals and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Let's go to the 15th chapter of the book of Genesis. You know what? Just for the sake of time, because we're almost done, I'm just going to tell you what happened. You can turn to Genesis 15, start around the 9th verse. What happened was, God supernaturally took the man of God out the tent and showed him all the stars in the sky. This is bad. We serve a bad God. Because the section tells us that basically God took him out the tent and supernaturally showed him all the stars. Woo! Hallelujah. And he said, if you can count them, he says, these are going to, this is going to be your seed. Now, the man of God was okay with all this, but God told him that he was going to inherit the land. That he had a little problem with. And that's where the covenant came from. Now let me tell you, the word covenant, bereth in the Hebrew, means a sense of cutting. Somebody say a sense of cutting. Let me show you what they did. They took an animal, cut it in half. One of the guys said, cut it in half, and you had around the Wichita Street. So what you had, one big slab of meat on one side, another slab of meat on the other side, and you got blood in the middle. Somebody had blood. I felt my teacher. I preached this once, and I call it a walk in the blood. And the reason why you got the two slabs of meat and you walking in the blood is because God is telling you something. He's telling you that if you break my covenant, you're going to wind up like this animal. Are you learning something? Now, what they did, they walked, so you in the blood, and they walked in a circular manner through the blood. Somebody had blood on you. And then God put the men of God. Isn't it interesting? This is what you call a unilateral covenant. Somebody say unilateral covenant. The unilateral covenant is a covenant that you don't have nothing to do with. And you learn something. The man of God was sleeping. He couldn't acquiesce and say, okay. He couldn't do nothing. And God did it on purpose. He put him to sleep on purpose because that way it's all on God. Are y'all learning something? Somebody say the unilateral covenant. Hallelujah. They had all kind of stuff. They had a covenant meal. Somebody said covenant meal. The dinner meal is still the covenant meal. But during those times in Israel, you had to be careful who you eat with. Are you with me? Huh? You couldn't go to McDonald's and eat your fries with somebody else. And that ain't right. I said you couldn't eat your Whopper with your friend if that ain't right with God. Because the dinner meal was the covenant meal. That meant this. If you ate dinner with someone, you were in covenant with them. Where they lies, cheats, and whoremongers, but you were in covenant with them. That was the covenant meal. Are you learning? They had all kind of stuff going on with the covenant. Did anybody ever watch any of the old, like Cochise, any of the old Indian cowboy stuff? And they had the blood brother. Remember the blood brother? Can I teach? See, there was a reason for that. What they do is they cut themselves right on the wrist, and then they mingle their blood. As they mingle the blood, you now have a covenant cut. If that person went to war, you went to war with them. Are you learning? That was the concept of the blood brother. And there was even a crest that you would have to denote the covenant. Now, this is what I probably not really like that. So you cut yourself, you mix the blood, right? And then you take mud or dirt or something. Now this ain't real cleanly property, but they take dirt and stuff and rub it in the cut. So Jackie, I'm sorry. All this stuff messing with you today. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So, but let me tell you why they did this. Is so God is so powerful. Because when you rub this stuff in the wound, it made the wound stand up. So, and they wanted it that way so everybody would see. So, when you walking, have your hands up or whatever, everybody would see that you were covenant man. Come on, because the scar showed you were in covenant. Are you learning something? Hallelujah. So God, berate, the word means a compact or a sense of cutting. See, there's a difference between a contract and a covenant. Hmm? Because see, in a covenant, you can't break it. With a contract, you can find a way out. Not with a covenant. Now, let me tell you something that God showed me. Anybody remember when Apostle Turner used to teach all time that in Genesis, bara meant to make something out of nothing? And I taught you that, just got through teaching you, that the Hebrew word for covenant is berate. Okay? If you look on your information there, you'll see it, berate. And that word berate also has a hookup in the Hebrew. It's a sister word to the word bara. Did nobody get that? Let me say it again a little bit more slowly. I said berate, the word that means covenant in the Hebrew, is a sister word in the Hebrew to the word bara, which means to make something out of nothing. They're connected words. Everybody awake? Everybody with me? So bara and berate, covenant and bara are connected words. So wrapped up in covenant is making something. So wrapped up in covenant is making something out of nothing. And that's just what God does for you when he works for us. It looks like he's making something out of nothing, but it's all wrapped up in the covenant. Are you learning something? So like I said, the main thing I want to get across about this Sabbath thing is that it's not just don't work. God, stop. I didn't work on myself. But the real picture, you really find that in the 31st chapter of Exodus. And that is this Sabbath is supposed to be a day of worship. That's why God doesn't want you doing anything else on that day, because it's the whole day is supposed to be a day of worship to Jehovah. Are you learning something? The whole day. I mentioned earlier, that's why Pastor used to always say over and over again, get the whole Sunday. That's biblical. All right? So here we go. And this was to be a sign, the Sunday school lesson said, to the heathen. God was always telling Israel, you do this to be a sign, and because you're set apart. Did you not know that Israelites couldn't marry outside Israel? Huh? If you read the book of Nehemiah, so, some of them Israelites married heathen women. Nehemiah went pull their beards. Y'all ain't praying with me. Pull their hair. Huh? Remember? Oh, y'all didn't read our Bible beside Rhonda. Come on. Why? Because they had defiled the living God by getting involved with the heathen. There's a reason why God not only had the Sabbath day, but there's a reason why God always told Israel to be apart. On the Sabbath, you couldn't even walk more than a mile on the Sabbath. Are you learning something? You couldn't make a fire on the Sabbath. Are you learning something? Why? Because that day was sanctified and hallowed to God. Are you learning? So now, God was always telling Israel, you're set apart, you're sanctified, set apart. Israel stayed in trouble because they like them heathen women. Nobody else. Somebody said, teach Elder Colbert, because they like them heathen women. That still goes on today. I'm sorry, I'm so bad, Elder, bad. I don't know what it is, but the Pope men of God, I guess the devil makes them unsaved women look better to them or something. I don't know what? That's where I was going next. That's where I was going next. But see, Samson had a lust problem. That was his problem. But once again, a woman outside of the covenant of Israel.
In the beginning, God said, well, he knew. He gave him that desire for that first one.
Yep.
So, now.
But the rest of them, come on, teach. Teach, Jackie. Teach. I'm about to have you come up here and help me teach, Jackie. Come on now. And post. Somebody say post Solomon.
Oh, Lord. Oh, that's good.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
We don't talk about that part.
Oh, God. Wow. He just asked for wisdom. Y'all got to stop hollering like that in Sunday school. But the Bible says he had them concubines, all them women. Can I just be Ted with you? There's a lot of stuff in the Bible I just don't get.
Jesus.
What do you have? What, 1,000 wives? 500 concubines, something like that? 1,600 women. Okay, so women. So the what? Rhonda. But you come on.
I think that's about like our human nature.
It is.
Because oftentimes we only see things from the aspect of
teach Jackie.
When they went in after them with the Red Sea, that's
yes,
an example. You say,
yes.
Well, were they stupid? Well, were the children of Israel stupid?
Yes, they were.
As soon as they got there and got in the sky, all the God did, all they saw, all they experienced.
They did it all over again.
We could have, because of the persecution, we could have went back. We messed up. We were good, but we weren't good.
Right. No, we weren't.
We weren't good, but look at where we at now. So every time you get into a place and then God turns around and do something for us, I just come out there. Then sometimes we get in a place where it's a familiar place.
Not sometimes, most of the time.
Most of the time.
The whole book of Judges is set up because Israel kept messing up.
They were good until they judge lived.
While the judges were alive, judge died, they go right back to it again. Are you learning something? Now it's also very interesting. You know, kind of let me show you stuff. I get sometimes God just kind of gives me clarity in how this whole stuff, how the whole situation looks. All right. So Solomon, the world's wisest man. I feel my teacher trying to come. Hallelujah. And he had all these women. So to me, that means that you had one of your 1,500 women a night. Isn't that about right? Or yeah. Jackie, this is the same Sunday school class.
Jesus.
I think he did. Oh, Jackie, I got a word for you. You have a great teaching gift, and you always have. It's been there for a long time. I've told you this before. This ain't the first time. Just start to prepare yourself a little bit more. Okay? You know, if there's a class and God moves on you, take it. Because there's a preacher teacher in there. When you invited me to eulogize your sister. I saw it. I saw it. And for some odd reason, I don't know why God does this. All these years, God sent me the reluctant preacher teacher. Ain't nobody praying. Powerful. Like Jackie sitting here messes up every class with all that revelation. Come on, somebody, every class, but just a little hesitant. And so I guess because I got a mercy gift or something, I guess that's what it is. But God always sends me these powerful preachers that don't know that they're powerful. And then it's up to Elder Colbert to tell them that. What's the matter? Hallelujah. Joyce, you another one. And she turned away. As soon as I turned close, that's a compliment, Joyce. The power of God is on you and has been for a long time. Even when you were here the first time. Come on, somebody. Hallelujah.
Yes, God.
Hallelujah. And you know what? Before I came, I was shy. Didn't like to be in front of people. Come on, somebody. But God changed. God worked. I always tell people, because people get up in front of you and stuff, and they be writing books and doing all kinds of stuff, but they don't tell you where they came from. Come on. I stuttered. I couldn't talk. I was nervous in front of people. Come on, somebody. But I prayed. And I asked God to fix it. I said, and I couldn't remember. This is the one where everybody laughed. Are y'all ready to laugh hard? Y'all ready? I couldn't remember no scripture. Now, we're going to have an insurrection in Sunday school. Oh, no. You know. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You lied in the house of God. No. No, I couldn't. And let me tell you why I couldn't. Okay. I tried to cerebralize, intellectualize the Bible. Because that was me. Some of y'all the same way. So the intellectual, and so God had to teach me. You can't study, you can't get the word with your head. God told me that the Bible is spiritual. And you got to be, don't hurt yourself, right? And you got to be spiritual to get the word. You can't use your intellect. And that's what I was trying to do. I got A in biochemistry in Northwestern. This ain't nothing but a little smoke. We knock this Genesis and John right out. Nope. So, couldn't use the intellect that God gave me because I had to learn that it was spiritual. So I asked God to put His word in my spirit. I asked Him to help me to learn how to talk a little bit better. Ain't nobody praying with me. So I want you to understand. Elder Coleman couldn't remember 9 scripture in the beginning. Do you all hear me? And Apostle Turner taught what? Your misery shall be your ministry, right? Hallelujah. And so you see me quote scriptures and stuff now, but now you know where I came from. And that's part of the reason I think why God gave me that gift was to encourage you. And He's no respecter of persons, the Bible says. Huh? If He can do it for a little old me, He can do it for you. And another thing that God always sends me is people that have problems. He sends me people that have problems. They studying it good, but retaining scripture. He sends them to me. Because I had that problem.
I was going to say, and that's why I think keep
Praise the Lord, saints. You have 1 more minute to wrap it up.
That's the place of remembrance and honor him for what he's done.
Come on, now, come on.
And he had a life. So he's like, as long as you do that and you take that time out
Yes.
in order to do that, then
Yes.
you remain in a proper
Perspective with him.
perspective.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
above, come on, the life, come on, come on.
So Jackie, pray to God. I believe God's calling you to be a Sunday school. Yep. Because you did it before, if I remember correctly. So I guess I'm hearing from God then, huh? Maybe I'm saved after all.
Jesus.
Y'all learn anything?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hallelujah. Amen. Amen. We stand in for prayer.